All right. Hey, so Kathy, thank you for getting on the call with me today.
My pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. As you know, I have launched my Money Savvy for Teens online course, and thank you for being a big supporter of that. And so my mind has been around, how do we continue to cultivate values and habits and really help our teens to grow into um, an adult that is both that's healthy in so many different areas. And so it's really beyond what test scores they get or what schools they get into. And so I think you and I had a few conversations around that subject, and so that's why I thought it's so interesting, because you and I in some way have been working on the same um, almost the same goals of how to prepare the kids for the real world, and I'm doing it from a financial aspect and you're doing it from the other aspects of it. So that's why I wanted to invite you on the call and really kind of talk about it, and because I think we had a couple of conversations that was really interesting, but I kind of wanted to get into more details of those conversations that was kind of quick in the past.
Yeah,
um, but before we get into it, but maybe you can just give our listener a intro about who you are and what you do first. To
sure,
just
sure. So I started Village Coaches July of 2019 after a long career in prep schools and as a former admissions officer. Um, Largely because I saw that a lot of the teens that I was working with were really spinning their wheels and checking boxes to try to get into a top tier college, but walking away without a very strong sense of purpose, or even when they got the brass ring, they were still felt like something was lacking in their lives, right? And so what we do at Village is we coach teens in the skills, habits, and mindsets that they need for lifelong success, which also happen to be the characteristics that make you a good candidate for college admissions. But we're mostly interested in making sure that the students that we work on go on to live fulfilling lives with meaning and value that
Mhm.
speak to their own personal values.
Great, yeah. And I think again, I think we share so much in common in terms of what we're trying to, how we trying to help people is not just about the money, but it's really what's behind a person, the values that driving their money behavior, and that's exactly what you're saying as well. And one of the things I think you brought up, and I thought it'd be interesting to get into today, is this concept of cash reserve and emotional reserve. And in my classes, I talk about having to have a cash reserve, and in a typical household environment, that's basically in the form of emergency fund, right? And based on what we're going through right now with the COVID-19, with the whole world being shut down, it just underscored the importance of having those reserves in these unexpected times and situations. And as an investor, having a cash reserve, it means that um, in your investment portfolio, you've got to allocate some portions of your asset to be either in cash or cash equivalent type of format, so that you have the liquidity to help you weather through any difficult times that you may run into. And that's to me, in my mind and in my area of work, that's what cash reserve means, and that's what they're for. And you brought up this also, that this emotional reserve, and I thought it's really interesting, and such a great analogy. And maybe you can talk more about what does it mean to have emotional reserve for a teen, and
Mm-hmm.
why that's important to have that.
Yeah, I think that, especially now we're in a global pandemic, and the things that kids rely on to get them through difficult times, right? A lot of them rely on friendships and spending time with their friends to decompress, or playing sports, or participating in the arts, and they don't have those things in their lives in the same way anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find myself working a lot with my students who are isolated right now, working on self-care and being okay with being alone and being silent, right? And the emotional reserves that they're drawing, are the emotional reserves that they need to build, come from knowing yourself and knowing what you need to help yourself feel good, right? Like without relying on anybody else, without relying on your parents, without relying on your friends, your teammates. What can you do to help yourself? And so I spent a lot of time talking to them about self-care. And it's interesting because I think it's something that we've talked about this before. It's a term that gets batted around a lot, but it means really different things for different people. And I don't think in the Silicon Valley we have necessarily that model. I think a lot of what we think about, when before shelter in place, before COVID-19, we're just going from one thing to the next thing. And that's our kids. They're just going from one activity to the next activity, to the next paper that's due, to the next tutor, to the next whatever.
Or multiple activity happening at the same time too.
What's that?
Or multiple activities happening at the same time as well.
That's right. And what they're finding is in the stillness, what is it that I actually need, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that fill my bucket up, right? What are the things that I need to do on a daily basis, right? I need to exercise. Like a lot of my kids are like, I know I need to exercise, and exercise means something different when I'm not playing a team sport, right? I need to sleep, right? I can't be running at the pace that I used to run at. I need to get 8 or 9 hours every night. I need to be creative, right? Like, what does that look like in your life? So I need to be out in nature. I need to be outside and feel the sunshine on my skin every day. Like those little things are going to be true even after the pandemic, even after we get to go be out in the world again, like making time for yourself to take care of your needs, and even just being able to recognize your needs, right? I think that's actually been a huge lesson for a lot of the teams that I work with. Because it's quiet now and they actually have time to sit in discomfort and be like, ooh, I'm really uncomfortable and I don't know what I'm feeling and I'm trying to understand it and I'm not really sure what I need, but I'm figuring it out. So I think that's a huge part of emotional reserves. And I hope that the habits that they start developing during COVID-19 will stick with them even after life returns to normal.
Yeah. And that's so true. Like, even for adults, we're just keep running, and there's just no stop, right? It is this rat race that we're all kind of in this wheel. And that's what I talk about with my clients as well, is like, we're so busy trying to make more money. But then sometimes we lost sight of the whys, or maybe even not just the whys, but also the hows, right? And it's sometimes when we cut back and have that stillness, the how becomes a lot more clear,
right?
Than when we're trying to just, so
you're just going through the list of to-dos, right? Here's all the things I need to do, and there's a lot more time now.
Right. And again, I guess that's this whole conversation about mindfulness, right? This is where the mindfulness comes in, because so that sounds like what you're talking about as well with the teams, is that to cultivate that kind of habits and mindfulness as they grow up into an adult. Absolutely. And so specifically, what kind of habits, like on a day-to-day basis, do you coach them on? Do you help them to establish?
So routine, right? And I think when you have school, the routine is like set for you, but now they have to set their own routine. So, when you work, when they go to college, the routine is actually a little bit different in college. You actually get to set your routine a little bit more. There's more flexibility to set routine in college, which I don't think they get a lot of practice doing in high school because everything's so scheduled for them. But this has been good practice for setting up a routine that includes taking care of yourself. That includes a routine that includes checking in with yourself every day, like taking 1 minute at some point in the day. I tell this to a lot of my kids, like, I want you to set aside something on your, like put a calendar reminder every day at what time, like whatever time feels like a good time for you to check in with yourself, right? And just to check, like, how does my body feel? What's my breathing like? What am I what feelings are coming up for me right now and why, right? Like maybe I'm feeling like really relaxed and really at peace. Okay, well, why is that? What happened this morning or what happened last night that helped that happen, right? So that you're more aware of yourself, right, and how things affect you. So that's one habit for sure that I try to get all of my students to do, which is 1 minute of mindfulness. Because it's hard to get kids to meditate, right? It's like the move from like not meditating at all and all of a sudden sitting in stillness for like 10 minutes. That's just a big ask for a lot of teenagers and just adults, not just teenagers. So what I do is I ask them to just be still for 1 minute, right? And you grow that 1 minute to 2 minutes and maybe eventually move towards an actual mindfulness practice. Because I do think it's in that stillness or that quiet moment that they can actually check in with themselves. And then it becomes more of a habit, right? Like, how am I feeling right now? Oh God, I'm really anxious. My shoulders are like shrugged up to my ears. Like that's what I do when I'm anxious. And sometimes I'll check in with myself and just be like, what's going on with my body? And my body will be like this, you know, and it's like, okay, what do I need right now? I'm going to get a cup of tea. I'm going to go, I'm going to go for a quick walk. I need to go pet the dogs, like whatever, to get themselves out of it. It's for me and for my kids. So that's one big thing that I tried to instill in all my kids. I think also one of the things I work on a lot, one of the habits that I'm trying to work on with my teens a lot, especially during shelter in place, is sleep hygiene. We're doing a lot of what time are you going to bed and why, right? I have teens who are telling me they're up until 3 a.m. And because they don't have to wake up the next day for class. And, and I'm trying to get them used to, the habit isn't just getting to bed at a regular time, but it's the why behind it. Like, why do you actually need that? What do you notice about your body when you sleep at 3 a.m. and wake up at 1 p.m., right? Is that really good for you? And does it serve your goals or the things that you need to do with your life? Right. And so it's a lot
how
of
do
that.
you keep them accountable on these daily routines and habits? And also, I think I would probably have the similar conversations with my kids, except I don't think they will listen to me. So, so how does it work with you working with the kids that do they actually listen? Do they actually follow through? Or do you find resistance where you have to actually kind of push a lot to get through to them? What's the dynamics there?
I think change takes time, right? So like to really see, I'm not going to fix somebody's sleep patterns in a week or 2 weeks or even a month. So what we do, and I think what teens will do for me that they may not do for their parents as readily, is they'll try, right? So if I say, here's a sleep diary and I want you to keep it for the next 2 weeks, they might actually do it for me. Whereas if you as a parent said, hey, there's a sleep diary, I want you to keep it for the next 2 weeks. They're like, you're out of the room. Yeah. I had a teen say to me yesterday where we were talking about self-care. She said, and I guess exercise really helps me feel better. And I'm like, why are you saying it like that? She's like, because my mom always tells me to exercise and I don't want her to be right. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. But I think that's true of the coach dynamic. I think parents see what I'm doing and recognize it as valuable in that they're kind of like, oh, I know these things as an adult, right? And I tell my kids to do them all the time, but my kids won't listen to me. And that's where we come in, because we actually do a lot of the things that you probably as a parent want for your kids and are asking them to do, but they won't do it for you.
That's right.
Right. When we talk to kids, we're like 100% on their team, right? Like, I'm on your team to help you achieve your goals. I'm not creating goals for you. I'm going to help you figure out what your own goals are. Like, how are you going to define success? What do you want out of this relationship? Right. So they get to choose that. And when and the things that they would choose are the same things that you would choose. They just don't want to tell their parents that.
They just don't want us to be right.
Yeah, exactly. They're just,
I can totally relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in terms of adolescent development, it's also normal, right? Like teens right now at the age, especially when they're high schoolers, right, they're starting to develop their identities in a way that they need to separate from their parents. They need to develop their own identity. Like, this is what I believe. It's not just what my parents believe, right? Like, I want this for myself because I believe this, right? It's not because it's my parents. And so it's also just a natural part of adolescence and growing up.
Right.
And so I think having us as partners, and we partner with parents a lot, you know, in terms of like what you're saying about accountability, like what are you seeing at home? You know, so much of my coaching is working with parents too.
Right.
We coach the kids, but we have to talk to the parents and keep them updated and say, this is what we're working on. Are you seeing this happening? Because this is what I'm hearing. And then I can go back to the student the next week and be like, hey, I heard this from your, you know, I checked in with your mom and this is what I've been hearing. And what do you think about that? And they're like, oh, well, I guess I did go to bed at 1 a.m. twice last week, you know?
Right.
Okay, well, what was going on?
Right. So typically, how often do you see the kids?
I see the kids once a week for 30 to 45 minutes, once a week via Zoom. So I've always coached even before shelter in place. We've always done everything online. So for 30 to 45 minutes. And then after each meeting, what we try to do, depending if there's action items, we usually try to drop a note to the parents and say, hey, this is what we talked about. And here are some of the things we're going to work on. And let me know what you're seeing at home and what's on your mind.
And so if there's a parent who would really like to get some help on coaching and mentoring their teenager, what does it look like working with you, you know, in terms of time commitment, as well as do you have a specific set of a framework that you take all the kids through a certain process, or is it completely personalized or one-on-one based on each child's need?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So we typically like to work with students for the entire school year. So we start with them. The school year for us starts in mid-August or so and ends in mid-June or so. And then we usually aren't coaching much during the summer because kids are busy with their summer plans. And also they should be able to have a break and have fun and relax and not be held accountable to somebody every week.
Yeah. Right.
Like they can just hang out and relax. And so the way that it works, our ideal situation would be this. We'd start with a home visit. So we'd come to your house, we'd meet with them, we'd do a whole family meeting. And we could see like where are you studying and what is your family like it gives us a little bit of insight into the family dynamic as well. And we ask some questions of each family member, and we try to get on the same page in terms of like, what are we working on? Where do we see the things that you're doing really well and your strengths, and where can we keep growing those strengths? And then where do you need extra support and how can we help with that? And as a family, we try to come up with a plan. And then we start meeting with the students for 30 to 45 minutes every week. And hopefully we do that through the entire school year. And the framework that we use, so philosophically, we believe in positive psychology, right? So instead of focusing on fixing what's wrong with you, let's bolster all of the things that we know are strengths, right? Let's bolster the things that we know can help you, right? Things like having a positive outlook, things like creating goals and meeting them, things like using your character strengths, things like identifying your values, you know, like all of these things that we know are good for you. So we're not looking at kids being like, these are the things that are wrong with you and let us fix them. Right? Like maybe there's some skills that we could support. Maybe you're not really organized. You know, like it's hard for you to have an organization system because your prefrontal cortex is very small and it's just hard for you, right? So we're going to help bolster some skills in those areas. But for the most part, we're trying to lift kids up, right? And the other thing, and a large part, we've already talked about this, but mindfulness is a big piece of what we do with our students. And we try to slowly get them to live a more mindful life, right? Again, like it's very hard to convince a teenager to just start meditating 10 minutes each day.
Yeah.
But we can infuse mindfulness practices into their life, right? Just walking mindfulness, right? Little things.
So do you have a typical age group that you start Like you like to start
Yeah.
working with the kids?
My preference is actually to start freshman or sophomore year,
Hmm.
where they're still developing habits. They're still, right. They don't have this like set identity of who they are or who they have to be because people have told them they're this person, right? So when I get kids as juniors or seniors, they have a set of beliefs about themselves already because either society has told it to them, they've heard it from their parents, they've heard it from their teachers, and it's not always helpful, right? The beliefs, and we as human beings have this. Like, I have a lot of kids who believe like, I just kind of, I don't work that hard, right? Because I always want to take the easy route. And I'm like, is that true? So like we're checking a lot of those beliefs. And I feel like earlier on, kids don't have those set beliefs about themselves yet.
Hmm.
Right. And we try to frame everything in a more positive way. It's like, it's not that you are always trying to take the easy route. It's just that you haven't found a teacher or a subject that's really engaged you yet, right? We haven't found a way for you to engage in this thing that's working for you.
Right, right,
And we don't blame students for anything that they're struggling with.
right,
It's like there's something we can do to help you grow this skill.
right, right. So, um, so how does our college application fit into all this, or does it?
Yeah.
And what would be the triggers for the parents to say, I would really like Cathy to be working with my ninth grade or 10th grade child?
Yeah. So the college application fits in with this. So I created this. I think I showed you my iceberg,
Oh, yes.
my iceberg of college admissions. So basically, the top of the iceberg is everything that you can see. So
Hmm.
the top of the iceberg is things like GPA, transcript, test scores, right?
Hmm.
Resume. Those are the things above the water we know that are part of the application process.
Hmm.
That's not subjective. It's pretty objective,
Hmm.
right? These are the awards I've gotten, right? And
Hmm.
then there's the very subjective piece of admissions, which makes up the bulk of admissions, which is what's beneath the surface,
Hmm.
which is values,
Hmm.
character, self-awareness, sense of purpose,
Hmm.
right? Engagement in the world, right? Feeling some connection to the world outside of just your family or your high school bubble, right?
Hmm.
Those are the things that we're really trying to promote, is like a
Hmm.
stronger sense of all of those things, because ultimately that's what colleges want. Colleges
Hmm.
actually want thoughtful kids who live authentic lives that speak to their values and have
Hmm.
something to contribute to the world,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So you can't just cultivate that by getting straight A's. Right? There's a lot of kids who are really strong students who are achievement oriented,
Right, right.
right? Who are really good at getting awards, but have no idea why they're doing what they're doing. They
Hmm.
just know they need to do it,
Right.
right?
Right.
And our whole thing is like, well, maybe you don't need to do everything, but maybe you could actually just cultivate a stronger sense of like, this is who I am, and these are the things that I put my energy into because I value them,
Mhm,
right? And when the colleges ask you, which they will in their college application,
mhm, mhm,
you know, why do you do these things? What are the things that matter the most to you? Tell us about
mhm.
a challenging time. Like, you could speak to those things with authenticity. And that's actually what helps people stand out in the
Right.
admissions
So I
process.
guess my question is, if a parent were to hire you to help, their teenage to build habits and really becoming a stronger person,
Yeah.
on their own, do they need to hire a separate college counselor, or is that something you can do as part of that whole process?
Oh, yeah. So we do that. Absolutely. So by the time, so what we find is when we work with freshmen or sophomores, like a lot of that is like self-evaluation and figuring out who you are and why you do what you do and prioritizing your life, right? And skills and habits if they need help in certain areas. And then what we find junior year is we do more of that. Like, we do the deeper dive. We're like, okay, so let's look at the things that you love to do. Now you know what you love to do. Let's look at how you can do them in different ways and use your character strengths to be creative in the ways that you pursue the things that you love, right? And then we also do some of the strategy piece, which is the like, let's find the best fit college, right? Like, should you apply early decision? We do some of that work as well. And
Mhm,
senior year, we're almost exclusively working with kids on managing their stress, time management around the college applications, and writing essays. Yeah, that's like the bulk of our work with seniors is really helping them put their best foot forward. And hopefully, if they've been working with us since they were freshmen or sophomores, by the time they get to the senior year and they're writing essays, they are like, oh, I totally know who I am. I know how to approach this essay, right? Like, I don't have to BS it. I don't have to make it up, right?
Right.
And those are the BS ones, are the ones that colleges can smell. I mean, I've read thousands of applications, right? Those are the ones that just don't engage you. They don't ring true, right? And so what we're trying to do is actually help students approach the college admission process in a really authentic way, so that when they come out of it, they actually feel good about themselves, right? They're like, I feel like I was my best self. I presented my best self in my application. I wasn't trying to be something that I thought I needed to be, right? The worst feeling, I think, for kids that we've worked with, or kids I've worked with in the past as a college counselor, is like, I did all the things I was supposed to do and it still didn't work, right? And because there's no formula at the end of the day, right? Like, I thought the formula was this: get really good grades, do all the activities, be a leader, and do community service. And I did all the things and I still didn't get into the school that I wanted to get into, because the below the stuff, beneath the surface stuff, is so important. That's why.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing what you do, because like I said, it really resonates with how I approach my work, and that's why I was very interested in having you on this call to chat with me. So thank you. And also, if people are interested in working with you, how would they find you?
So our website is villagecoaches.com, or you can email me, Cathy, CATHY, @villagecoaches.com.
Got it. And I'll put that in the comments below as well.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you
so much for talking to me.